Sonic Superstars is looking good. Like, really good. Like, I have no major reservations upon seeing the initial gameplay of a Sonic outing for once kind of good. And that's what worries me. Sonic Superstars is the next big upcoming game in the blue hyperfixation brain rot line of products, also known as the Sonic the Hedgehog franchise. I'm unfortunately a fan of this thing, and find myself getting invested in most new releases, either out of curiosity, hope, or just to point and laugh. This is all you're getting me to say about this thing, by the way. It doesn't need to exist, it looks mediocre as hell, and yo ho, I will not be paying for Paramount Plus to watch it. Superstars had long been rumoured, albeit in an incorrect state, and finally got an official reveal at the Summer Lane Fest earlier this year. Gotta say, that was a genuinely awesome moment. Complete surprise announcements like this are so fun when they're pulled off right. Sam's procrastination, obliteration, exasperation, alteration station summed up my reaction pretty well.
What the f***, man?
Seeing Blue and his crew head off to the North Star Islands, which could potentially tie into Frontiers somehow, an idea that just fills me with an endless supply of joy. Superstars is taking Sonic back to his classical roots. Again. Though this time we're leaning far less in the nostalgia direction, instead trying to produce a concretely new classic Sonic entry. Mania's indulgence in the past kinda left it feeling more like a victory lap in between proper outings, and while it fully worked for that game, it's nice to see that classic Sonic isn't stuck being a relic of the past. New zones, new mechanics, new characters, new visual direction. This is definitely more of a Sonic 4 than Mania ever was. In every sense of the word. There'll be no Egg TV with a high-pitched beep in reference to the 25th anniversary party here, and while it does suck that those tiny little bursts of love for the franchise are now gone, this is definitely a good direction long term. Sonic Superstars is aiming to solidly progress 2D Sonic as a whole forwards, in a variety of ways, one of which being all new locations. Yes, Green Hill, Chemical Plant, and Sky Sanctuary are finally off the menu. Superstars is being entirely comprised of brand new locations, and thank God, that decision was long overdue. And now those old zones aren't as wholly erased as I'd quite like, you can still feel their specific archetypes looming in the background. We still have a temple found in a sky location, and a hilly terrain that is coloured green, and I'm sure there's some kind of chemical-based factory somewhere in here, but we're not literally playing through Green Hill itself again, which is a win. We are in the battle mode though, for fuck's sake. That said, I'd be hard-pressed to say I'm feeling particularly jazzed about anything that's been shown off yet either. We've got a pretty standard jungle, another sky temple, the hills that are green. There's a few locations that I'm mildly interested in, but nothing's quite grabbed my attention and left me staring in awe the same way a Studiopolis or Press Garden might. Pinball Carnival Zone had a lot of potential based off of that gorgeous concept art, but as expected, a large chunk of the magic was lost when it got fully realised in 3D. Oh well. Also, wow, I thought that was a temporary title. That's the finished zone name? That sucks. And, like, I know some variation of a hilly terrain with a green colour scheme as the first level is a staple for classic Sonic, but after a decade straight of that idea popping up in every single new release, no matter the context, I was kind of hoping for a much more drastic shift up in our first level. Like, all you have to do here is invert the hues and... I'm sorry, I know this is nitpicking, but when you promise me brand new places for Sonic to go, I kind of expect more than just Green Hill but blue now. $60, by the way. Thankfully, the way Sonic goes around these new places is one of the few things that hasn't been changed. In fact, according to Izuka, it should be near impossible to distinguish Sonic's physics from past outings. Yes, that's right, momentum is in play, along with all of the bells and whistles that usually accompany such a feature. Slopes are a challenge to climb on their own, speed is gained as you rush down inclines, you can go so fast that the camera struggles to keep up according to Fidel. Everything you'd expect here is on offer, and the level design seems of equal quality to match. I can't say I'm any kind of expert on the intricacies of 2D Sonic level construction, but I mean, it certainly looks up to snuff. I spotted plenty of alternate pathways, lots of curved structuring, a handful of those moments where you either learn the game's language or lose some progress. It all seems up to the typical classic Sonic standard to me. The base of Sonic Superstars seems very solid, almost flawless in fact. I have no doubts that this game will be, at the very worst, pretty damn decent. However, it's everything surrounding that solid base that has me suspicious. For as much as Superstars is a return to the style of the past, this has modern day Sega written all over it. I can practically feel their fingers inside every little corner of this pie, and not in any good way. Emerald powers for a start, the big new gimmick of the game. These are 7 brand new abilities, one tied to each Chaos Emerald, seemingly created just for the sake of having a gimmick to set the game apart. Allegedly, just recreating the classic Sonic gameplay in and of itself isn't enough to entice new players, which, sure it isn't. That said, I'm not opposed to this idea on paper. Giving each emerald some unique ability to spice up the gameplay sounds like a pretty good idea. It helps make each emerald a little more distinct, and it's a concept that seemingly grew pretty organically out of this franchise, rather than their usual method of just taking something popular and forcing Sonic to fit its mold. However, the realization of this idea here leaves a lot to be desired. All 7 of these emerald powers are fucking weird, man. None of these seem to inherently gel with base classic Sonic gameplay, instead adding on half-hearted mechanics that don't nicely fit with what's been established. Or you get the polar opposite problem. Abilities whose sole purpose seems to be baby-proofing the existing gameplay to a ridiculous degree. Avatar, for example, the one featured in all the marketing. This causes a swarm of clones of whoever you might be playing as to come in from the left side and demolish any enemies on the screen. Now that sounds kinda cool. A move like this would be very fun to make use of in Frontiers, but therein lies the problem, really. What is a combat-focused move doing in a classic Sonic game? Enemies, more often than not, are simply an extension of the level design in any classic outing, being used alongside the geometry to aid your traversal. They don't appear in particularly large numbers, and they're hardly a challenge, packing a whole one rather telegraphed attack. Not to mention, they can be taken out in a single jump. Forget the fact that this move is a bit too helpful in what it's trying to accomplish. This move isn't even needed in the first place. Its only conceivably viable use is found in boss fights, as has been demonstrated. But then that creates the exact opposite problem. The fight is over far too quickly now. Any challenge presented by the boss can be completely skipped. What purpose does this have? Do you not want me engaging with your game? This just seems like a prettied up skip button to use if I don't feel like bothering with a boss fight, and that doesn't sound any fun. And, spoiler alert, every single Emerald power is like this. Ivy lets you halt in place and grow a vine upwards to reach higher platforms and collectibles. This one's awesome. We're not only obliterating any pace you might have managed to build up through the move's forced verticality, but we're also robbing Tails of some of his uniqueness in being able to reach those higher platforms. Oh, splendid. Water turns you into said liquids, allowing you to climb up waterfalls for more slow-paced verticality, with a character who thrives on speedy horizontality. Plus, it seemingly turns you into something of a drill wisp when you're under the waves, letting you move around any underwater sections totally freely. That concept isn't too bad, but you kind of have to design those sections with that power in mind to truly get the most out of it, which won't be happening. These powers can be activated whenever and wherever you want, so I'm assuming this is more of a skip button once again. If those pesky underwater sections are giving you too much trouble, don't bother learning the game to conquer the challenge. No, just use that water power and skip right past them. Bullet seems to stop you in mid-air, letting you aim yourself in any given direction before taking off wherever you choose, then pausing you again and letting you aim, and then rinse and repeat until the power runs out. Hardly what I'd call a bullet. But this one screams broken to me, and not in any literal programming related sense, but simply in the mileage you can potentially get out of it. Bottomless pits are quite synonymous with this character, especially in his classic outings, and it's a level design quirk I'm fairly certain is going to make a return in Superstars. And this has the potential to completely bypass that challenge. Say it with me now, a glorified skip button. Vision has the most inherent promise out of any of these powers, allowing you to see platforms and collectibles that you couldn't before. And now that sounds pretty cool in theory, but the attached screenshot shows it's just gonna function like all the others. A ridiculously over-aiding power that just showers you with rings, and makes even the most rudimentary jumps that bit easier. Also, apparently the game outright notifies you if there's something nearby that's actually worth activating the power for, which kinda takes away from the entire appeal, doesn't it? Aren't I meant to be, like, using my brain and paying attention to the level construction? Trying to learn your game design language to instinctively know when to activate the thing myself? You've essentially just boiled the gimmick down into an extra mindless button press in order to grab a collectible. Well done. Slow might be the most insulting of all the Emerald powers. It does exactly as the name suggests. Finding a section too difficult? Just slow time down to a crawl and avoid the challenge altogether. No, don't feel you need to play the game and learn the language of its level design. Nah, we've all got places to be. Just hit a button and skip right past that difficulty. You've earned it. This is yet another power that could actually work really well if the levels were designed around it. See, it's about time for a perfect demonstration. But again, that's not the case here. The last Emerald power, Extra, simply grants every character a bonus attack. Oh, Lord knows we needed them with the way these classic Sonic levels are designed. I mean, just look at all the enemies on my screen. You get a punch for Knuckles, a tornado spin for Tails, Amy chucks her hammer around, and interestingly enough, Sonic gains the homing attack. Yes, the move that was only created in the first place to replicate the consistency of jumping on enemies but in a 3D space. Sonic now does that in 2D. Doesn't that eliminate a lot of the challenge, I hear you ask? Yes, it fucking does. These emerald powers are all activated via a little circle that pops up over your character, and man, never in my life did I think I'd see a Ratchet and Clank styled weapons wheel in my Sonic game. Though interestingly, there's 8 slots in this menu. I think the 8th slot is reserved for going super when you have all 7 emeralds, but I'm not 100% sure on that. So yeah, this is what I mean when I say I can smell Sega's influence all over Superstars. Classic Sonic games typically aren't particularly difficult by any means, but they are rather unforgiving. You'll often be taught the unspoken Sonic language pretty early on, then be asked to get to grips with it rather quickly. You need to start learning timing, distance, all that jazz fairly early into the game, or else it's ring loss after ring loss for you, with the occasional death thrown in there whenever that classic Sonic bullshit shows up. So, seeing all that these emerald powers offer, I can only really come to one of 2 conclusions. Either A, the game no longer presents any degree of challenge, being no harder than Yoshi's Crafted World, allowing these powers and their complete baby-proofing to fit right in. Or B, classic Sonic is going to remain as challenging and unforgiving as usual, only you're now equipped with several abilities that let you bypass that challenge on a whim. Essentially a tutorial mode built right into your moveset. It doesn't sound too bad when I put it like that, but think of the ramifications of allowing this system so freely. You are not going to improve as a player. You are not going to feel the triumph of conquering a tough section that was giving you a hard time through your sheer determination. With these emerald powers having such a tiny cooldown time, and being very abusable, you will be trained to see something difficult, then say, oh, I can't deal with that on my own, emerald powers go. And now that is all quite dependent on just how the emeralds are dished out to you. If they're more of a post-game reward, then this nullifies these problems to an slight degree. However, if they're as freely handed out as they appeared to be in the demos, then this just doesn't sound like a particularly fun addition to me. I'm sorry. I'd like to also briefly touch on the level design again, because though everything seems mostly sound, there's still 1 or 2 elements rubbing me the wrong way. Rail grinding seems like a pretty fun addition, if a bit simple, though there's seemingly a baseline speed that you'll be set to no matter how you approach these things, which takes away from the physics-based fun a little, if you ask me. In fairness, you can definitely increase your speed when on these. It just doesn't seem like you can go below a certain threshold without outright stopping. I'm also noticing 1 or 2 random pace-killing moments. Stupid little gimmicks that halt you in place just to grab a couple extra rings. And now that's not a wholly foreign concept for classic Sonic, so the blame isn't squarely on Superstars here. The one part that really threw me was this section here, where about 50 different enemies suddenly start assaulting you all at once. Now this seems like a good opportunity to use the Avatar ability, but not through any kind of natural level design. They had to suddenly abandon all the principles of classic Sonic level construction just to prompt you to use the Emerald power. That suggests this game could be full of little sections like that, which I see doing more harm than good. It doesn't even work. Sonic still manages to skip past all these guys without taking a hit, so what was the point? There's also 1 or 2 stage gimmicks I'm seeing, which just put me a little on edge. There's Act 2 of Speed Jungle, which sees butterflies lighting your path through an endless mist of pitch black. It's not inherently bad, but hello darkness, my old friend. I can't help feeling like I've experienced you before. And then there's this weird Namco arcade-looking retro land, featuring a jellyfish venture, rocket blasting, and several other oddities, I'm sure. These all seem pretty pace-killing, tedious, and rather lol random just for the sake of it. That jellyfish one especially, fuck me man, this is some shovelware garbage. This feels more at home in goddamn Balan Wonderworld than it does Sonic. Who's developing this game again? Also, Fang's back, which seems rather cool, until you realise this is the exact same haphazard nostalgia nonsense that they've been getting away with for the past few years now. The kind that will proudly flaunt Mephiles in their mobile game, but prohibit his use in anything mainline. The kind that will gladly take your praise for referencing Gun and Maria, yet still won't allow any humans besides Eggman to make a physical appearance. They want the acclaim for bringing back something from the past, yet refuse to commit to the entirety of those ideas. Namely, why is it just Fang? Where are Bean and Bark? I know they were all introduced separately, but no mention has been made of this inclusion being any kind of nod to Sonic Triple Trouble, and for literal decades these three have been shown off together as Team Hooligan. Mania just did this. The previous classic Sonic game got this right, but well, a lack of consistency is the one consistency in Sonic the Hedgehog. Don't think about the details, just point and clap at the bounty hunter Jerboa's return, like a good little consumer. However, I would like to bring attention to his character bio, that mentions him being known under a lot of aliases due to his profession. That's a genuinely great way of tipping your hat to the Knack the Weasel name. A good job whoever wrote that one. Now, something I want to make abundantly clear is that I'm not saying any of this for certain. This game is not out yet. I do not possess it. I quite literally cannot make any judgment calls 100%. These are all just my thoughts now, pre-release. A little time capsule of the things rushing around my head before Superstars is birthed into the world. Maybe the level gimmicks will wonderfully keep up the pace. Maybe the emerald powers are integrated perfectly into the game. Maybe Fang is given a solid reason for coming back as a solo act. I certainly hope so. Despite my general negativity surrounding this brand more often than not, I don't ever want any Sonic releases to be bad. Well, most Sonic releases. I'm simply used to Sega's antics, and how they can manage to pollute even the safest of bets. How their corporate greed and lack of developer care can infect what should be home runs for this franchise. You know, a lot of my concerns here might be doused if I could actually try the thing out for myself. I probably should have released that show floor demo to the public by now, but hey, why do that when you can incentivize a pre-order? And that kind of thing is exactly what I'm talking about. Sneaky, slimy, sinister Sega is written all over Sonic Superstars, entirely to its detriment. Case in point, that damn Lego collaboration. So this thing started off harmless enough. We got a Dimensions crossover in 2016 that was just filled with love for the franchise, and then an ideas set last year that took away all of the charm from the original pitch, though I blame that more on the Lego company than I do Sega. However, as of 2023, Sega have been going in hard on the Lego partnership in a really rather transparently money-focused way. Like, it started off with the products themselves. Those are fine. A rather safe, predictable kind of fine, but fine nonetheless. And then we got a trailer to promote them. Makes sense. Maybe going a tad overboard by bringing in the actual voice actors, but I get it. You gotta advertise the products. Nintendo did that too. But then it stops being just product advertisements. Out of seemingly nowhere, Sega and the Lego company suddenly became the best of friends. Suddenly we're filming multiple elaborate made-for-TV looking skits. We're erecting 2 giant statues for conventions. We're producing an entire musical number. We're trying to kickstart a hashtag. We're creating multiple mobile game events around this collaboration. We are ending our big Sonic-themed Nintendo Direct knockoff with one giant plug for Lego's theme park. And now, we're forcing this shit into Superstars. Because you know what pairs wonderfully with the timeless charm of classic Sonic? An IP collaboration specifically rooted in 2023, centered around this character's modern interpretation, no less. Oh, those two ideas just meld together expertly, don't they? The sets don't even seem that bad. I quite like them, in fact. I am entirely okay with this partnership existing on retail shelves. Please stop meat-riding the Lego company so unapologetically, Sega. You're just very transparently trying to wring as much money out of this collaboration as possible, which, like, fair enough. But could you not be so overt about it? Jesus. Like, what is the actual point of trying to distinguish these two facets of the brand? If you're just going to chuck Green Eyes Sonic and Modern Clothed Eggman into a classic game anyway, should a big enough paycheck come knocking at your door? That all said, I do want to praise the trailer that announced this Superstars Lego content. That was animated wonderfully. Awesome work there. Plus, and I can't decide if I hate this or not, but they included an awesome Western-styled remix of Eggman's boss theme from Sonic 1, when him and the Hog are brawling it out. As in, a commercial utilised game music better than the motion fucking picture. Paramount, please die. Please just stop existing. I would be a significantly happier person if your company went out of business. Anyway, yeah, we've got Lego Sonic content bleeding into this game, seemingly just in the form of some skins. Though the trailer kind of implied that the entire geometry would get remodeled to look like Lego, but it was also just an animated thing that didn't provide any kind of in-game look, so I don't know, man. Skins as a whole are another part of the Superstars equation. There's a modern Amy design if you sign up for the game's newsletter, and a Max the Rabbit throwback if you buy the digital deluxe edition. The Amy one is kinda cute, a little bit cursed too. If you're gonna swap out the dress, I'd probably switch up the hair too. And Max the Rabbit is nice. A fitting time to reuse that concept, seeing as Naoto Oshima's back on the team. Although I can't help but look at this render and notice how stiff it feels when compared to the original artwork. Oh, the wonders of classic Sonic in a 3D graphical style. And hey, speaking of, the visuals. Part of me wanted to get into this aspect right away, since it's the very first thing anyone takes note of regarding this game, but I decided to hold back until now, seeing as I don't have a very popular opinion here. Most people see this and say it looks fine, Wonderful, even. And I don't necessarily disagree. The game doesn't look bad at all. I can totally live with this. Just, you know, maybe in separate beds. However, what I find so annoying about the new visual direction is that the player's moment-to-moment readability has been seriously weakened, at least for Sonic standards. See, most franchises can bounce between 2D and 3D art styles pretty easily. Their core gameplay isn't affected by any visual approach. Sonic's whole thing, however, is about gaining and maintaining speed, dashing faster and faster through the level, to the point where even the camera can struggle to keep up. So it's very important to pick a visual direction that will most aid that experience, and a universal fact about you or me or anyone else with a human eye is that lines read far quicker than solids. So, do you see my issue here? Why on God's green hill zone would you ever turn classic Sonic 3D? That objectively hurts the gameplay. And yeah, I know Generations and Forces both exist, but those two had to prioritize a unifying graphical style that could house both classic and modern. I hazard to say there was no other viable direction to go with. Here, however, this is just a classic outing. This was a choice. Mania stuck with pixels, that approach was entirely on the cards. And again, I'm over-dramatising this a tad. What we've got here isn't, like, unreadable or anything. Evidently, people are still having a wonderful time. However, those extra few nanoseconds to process whatever's on your screen are pretty damn important when it comes to classic Sonic gameplay, so the choice to abandon your prior, rather flat visual direction that worked perfectly fine in favour of something that actively worsens the experience, that seems like a rather short-sighted move to me. Across multiple news outlets, Takashi Iizuka has stated that the jump to 2.5D was one of the first decisions made for the next big classic Sonic game. Allegedly, this even dates back to when Mania 2 was still on the cards. This seems entirely born out of the desire to modernise classic Sonic, evolve the experience, as he loves to say about both this and Frontiers, interestingly enough. However, as I've hopefully made a decent case for, transitioning this particular style of gameplay into a 3D visual direction is not quite the home run change he'd like to present it as. Fascinatingly, they were allegedly considering a hand-drawn style early on, and like, yes, oh my god, go with that. That works out for everyone. The visuals remain flat, yet you still distinguish this title from past games. You can control the colour palette like nothing else. It would look super stylish, and it would stand out from the crowd wonderfully, being insanely eye-catching. We've all seen the nostalgic pixel-based platformer translated into 2.5D phenomenon before. This didn't wow people so much as it followed the industry trend. However, if you had a Sonic game that looked like an illustration brought to life, if you touched on that Cuphead pulse, that would get people talking. So, why didn't they go with this direction? It sounds perfect. Why would this be abandoned over bog standard 2.5D? Well, money, obviously. The Sonic team's getting more of a budget now, but at the time Superstars went into production, they did not have the financial backing to pull a hand-drawn style off. That's without a doubt the actual reason. Although I'd like to point and laugh at the excuse Iizuka gave real quick. Roll the clip.
After we made Sonic Mania, we wanted to take the side-scrolling platform action gameplay in a new direction. In the early days, we did have an idea of maybe having hand-drawn animations as a concept, but when we thought about it, the 3D model we could really get to mimic the pixel animation and the pixel art And so we set out with the 3D models to really animate the game and have the game look and feel and animate just like the original Sonic the Hedgehog did.
That is fucking hilarious. The idea that 3D models would better mimic sprite animation than a frame-by-frame, hand-drawn approach is... I'm not even gonna finish that statement. That is so laughably false. It is also very funny that you thought you could manipulate 3D models to replicate this type of animation, considering your at-the-time budget of $2 and a dream, and boy howdy do the results speak for themselves. This is very obviously a cover-up, so that Sega's piss-poor budgeting for this particular franchise won't get so publicly exposed, or at least I sincerely hope it is. If anyone ever tells you with a straight face that 3D models are better capable of recreating the vibe and feel of classic Sonic than something hand-drawn, just show them the Mania intro, or the Mania series. Or, here's a good one, maybe show them the Mania pre-order trailer, done in a hand-fucking-drawn style. I still hold on to the belief that this poor man is seen as a mouthpiece by Sega to spout their rhetoric. He seems like a nice enough guy. I don't wanna come to the conclusion that he's responsible for these barely thought out ideas. Like, even in the professionally produced interview video, Oshima mentions how challenging it was to translate classic Sonic into 3D, and it's like, yeah, if only there was some fucking solution to that. Anyway, there you go. That's my hot take on the visual direction. Apologies for the negativity, but I'm just not fully vibing with their chosen style here. Like in one of the interviews, Iizuka mentions that something brand new that they can now pull off with the 3D graphics is having Sonic move in and out of the background. He specifically calls that out as something they couldn't do before with the pixel style, and it's just like, no, that is a bald-faced fucking lie. Some bonus reasons that turn me off from the look a little would include this horrible rim lighting that makes everything look all plasticky. Removing that alone would bump the visuals up by an entire IGN point. And then there's the all-new Badnik designs that like to switch between genuinely great new additions to the robotic insect cast and Generations Eyes hello! Oh, consistency, consistency, why does Sega hate you so? Jesus, I sounded like fucking just a robot.
My eyes have seen the glory of the cleansing of YouTube.
As mentioned, the animations are, well, as under-budgeted as ever. A large majority of them featuring that ever so slight stiffness that just expertly pulls you out of the illusion and reminds you that this is simply a lifeless model. What a sneaky fucking tactic it was, putting this really polished animation right at the start of the trailer when Sonic first transitions into 3D. That's a very smart way to get people on your side from the get-go. If this level of quality was maintained throughout the game, then this wouldn't be a problem at all. But the fact that they essentially put their best foot forward right at the start, almost so that the animation appeared to be a resolved issue, while you're processing every other element of the reveal, I don't know, it just rubs me the wrong way. I won't say for certain that this was their intention, but well.
Oh, this looks so good. Dude, it looks so good.
Oh my god, this looks so cute.
This looks clean.
Oh my god, look how beautiful, bro. Look how fluid his animation is. Like, oh my god, they animated him so much.
Also, these models, wow, we need a makeover. I have never liked this 3D interpretation of classic Sonic. Something about his proportions are off just enough that he winds up looking really pudgy and fat. There aren't even that many changes you need to make to completely turn the quality around here, as has been proven by the Twitter folk many a times. They can also work their magic on the in-game stuff too. With just a few minor tweaks, you too can make 3D classic Sonic look good. I'm pretty sure these models haven't even been made specifically for this game either. I'm not sure exactly where Knuckles and Amy are sourced from, but Sonic, Tails and Robotnik? I'm 99% certain those three are the Generations assets, 12 years later. Oh, classic Sega. Actually, no, I take that back. I have a very good idea where Knuckles and Amy are sourced from. That all said, there's still some cute details present here, involving animation and models that I think are worth highlighting. For one, everyone's quills and hair tufts and whatnot all bob along when they're running at top speed, and that's pretty fun. You can also see other characters that you're not playing as helping out in the background during gameplay, which tangibly adds to the experience, helps make it feel like all of these guys are going on the adventure together, rather than only the one you've selected. They've also included a new trap in one of the cutscenes, pulled directly from Mania Adventures. That's awesome. This is still the best of the Sonic YouTube animations, even after the Knuckles prologue, so seeing some of it bleed into a proper mainline game is downright wonderful. Wonderful! Speaking of, I should probably mention this little gremlin now, huh? This is Trip, the new female antagonist, who's both protecting Eggman and helping his forces fight off Sonic, as both sides trek across a new, unexplored set of islands with Star somewhere in the name. She's actually designed by Naoto Oshima too, and honestly, she's pretty cute. Seeing her panic and run around in circles when she accidentally traps Fang, that's fun. I'm endeared to her already. That said, I'm not exactly sure how she fits into the game yet. Something like the hard-boiled heavies show up, and you can pretty instantly tell what they are to the overall experience. But Trip, not so much. While she's been described as an antagonist, I can't exactly picture a boss fight with her. I mean, even her literal name references her clumsiness. And I'm not convinced that she'll have much story relevance, since this is a classic outing. There's as much focused on story in these things as there are Shadow the Hedgehog cameos. However, if they want to do something really cool with her, then I am more than down for a Spot-esque situation, where she starts off weak and laughable, only to grow into an eldritch abomination by the time the final boss rolls around. You can't tell me that wouldn't be rad. For now though, she's just kinda cute. I do very much want a plushie. Also, and this is somewhat of a backhanded compliment, but I like the attempt at smear frames when these guys are running at top speed. It's not quite all there yet, and wouldn't even be an issue if this was still pixel art, but for what's actually present here, I don't hate the attempt. Now, that's the bulk of content in Sonic Superstars. I mean, there's a couple extra quirky aspects to the game, such as a battle mode and 4-player co-op, both sounding exactly like the kind of additions that offer 5 minutes of fun, only to never be touched again. There's also a new intro animation, which looks surprisingly unpolished, deconstructed far better by people who actually know what they're talking about, and a nice variety of special stages that all look just fine, but that's the majority of what I have any interest in talking about. I mean, I could mention the random black stars in the logo, but... So, now that you've gotten a good general overview of what Superstars entails, I've got one simple question. Is this worth $60 to you? I mean, maybe it is. Game value for money is quite subjective at the end of the day, but generally, the way corporations determine these price points is based on budget and content amount. And on both of those values, selling this for $60 is fucking farcical. Namely when you compare this to Sonic Frontiers, the last major mainline release, coming out less than a year ago. That game also sold for $60 and I think justified it. Frontiers offered 4.5 giant maps to explore, stuffed with things to do. It had combat, it had platforming, it had puzzles, it had fishing, it had a built-in Sonic Forces. I mean, an entire hour of the experience was just dedicated to the game's cutscenes. The average player took roughly 20 hours to get through the game, on just one playthrough no less. Whilst it might not have had the AAA polish, the amount of content more than justified the AAA price tag, at least in my humble opinion. Superstars, by comparison, features 12 zones divided into 2 acts, and if this plays anything like a classic Sonic game, which, gee, I sure hope it does, those should all take anywhere between 3 to 10 minutes per act. So, at the absolute most, a beginning to end playthrough of the game should only take you a handful of hours. Now, yes, you can increase that number 3 times over with a Tails, Knuckles and Amy playthrough, and you can also probably add on an hour or 2 with that fancy battle mode, but all of those are extras to the experience. There's no Mario Party reminiscent side mode to bump up the runtime in Frontiers, nor are there any extra playable characters. Or rather, there weren't. Those 20-ish hours encapsulate just one run of the game's story, with no extra content padding it out. Plus, even if we treat all of Superstars' content equally, and compare this accumulative runtime to Frontiers, it still comes out as less. So, and in terms of budgets, do I even need to make an argument here? Look at these 2 screenshots, you can just feel the difference in money spent, right? That's what's so insulting about this price tag, really. It's not about which is actually better. There's no 2D versus 3D here. It's the simple fact that Sega are genuinely trying to pass off a game that's the same size as Sonic Mania at a price point equal to the Hedgehog's single biggest outing to date. Like, that's just kinda scummy, right? These games are blatantly not of matching value. Now, replay value is a term that's been brought up a lot around this. The idea that the game's $60 are justified because classic Sonic outings are inherently designed to be replayed again and again and again, so Superstars in theory may provide a lifetime of gameplay to the individual. And like, I get the mentality, I know what you're saying, but that mentality is also shared by a very select few in the grand scheme of things. Most people don't in fact replay Sonic games to the point of mapping out the levels inside their brains. Most people have a life. The average consumer is going to pick Superstars up, experience those initial 4 hours, and then never touch the game again. And for those people, the majority, asking $60 just for those 4 hours is a pretty tall order. And all of that is ignoring the utter batshit insanity inherent to the replay value argument in the first place. Like, what are we saying here? What's actually being argued? That because an individual may find the gameplay extremely compelling and decide to put in a lot more hours than the game asks for, That means we should be charging everyone the highest upfront fee that we can get away with? What fucking logic is that running on? Why would you, the consumer, validate losing more of your money than necessary simply because you're likely to play a lot of the game? Don't you want a cheaper entry fee? Wouldn't that be preferable? Isn't, like, the most financially successful game on the planet the most financially successful game on the planet, specifically for that reason? Personally, I'd rather not establish a system of monetary value based on purely subjective enjoyment. That sounds rather ludicrous to me. Plus, if we reverse this idea, then I don't think the replay value crowd would enjoy the implications so much. See, the most prominent figures I've seen make this argument play a lot of classic Sonic. Yeah, wow, what a shocker, right? But if we're being totally fair, and applying this higher playtime equals higher price mentality across the board, then those classic Sonic games that these guys all love, they shouldn't have cost them just $60. Mania, for example, a game that some of these people have put hundreds of hours into, shouldn't that have had an upfront cost of, like, $20,000? You know, since you got so much replay value out of it. Some other rock-solid defences I've seen people raise for this particular price point would include A, the jump to 3D graphics. A Mega Man 11 cost $30 at launch, so fuck off. B, multiplayer features, a truly revolutionary concept for this particular franchise. C, customization, you know, that thing that even free-to-play games offer. And D, collectibles. Yes, collectibles, the one consistent element featured in every single platformer, dating back to the inception of the genre, that apparently is worth bumping Superstars' price up to that of a AAA game. What are you on? These are all coming from fans, by the way. Replay value, this dogshit PR sounding talk, it's all coming from normal human beings, with no financial incentive to make the price tag look appealing. All I have to say is well done, Sega. I fucking salute you. You have successfully brainwashed a generation. This is all a completely pointless argument, by the way, since Sega themselves priced this exact kind of gameplay experience very differently back 5 years ago with Sonic Mania, that one costing a mere $20. That was a brand new classic Sonic game, featuring 12 zones divided into 2 acts, and offering 5 playable characters by the end of its updates, and yet they only felt that one was worth 20. Bit of a difference in pricing there, huh? Now, game theory time, but I think Sega might simply be pricing Superstars at $60 because Sonic's regained a lot of popularity in the last few years. They know that they can now get away with a AAA price tag again because people will buy it anyway. Hell, some will even attempt defending it. And so, they slapped a big ol' 60 onto the cover. And I mean, it worked. For all my rambling here, I still pre-ordered. I want that stupid Lego Eggman skin. If I may just squeeze out a tiny bit more negativity surrounding price, I'm almost certain there's already a planned Plus DLC for this thing too. That's been the trend for every new classic Sonic release for half a decade at this point. Granted, Mania and Origins never got a physical edition at launch. That was remedied with the Plus expansion in both cases, whereas Superstars can be found on store shelves from the get-go, so I'm not 100% on this prediction. Still, it certainly sounds like Sega, right? To try and wring an extra $10 out of its player base with some DLC next year? Maybe this is where Bean and Bark will finally show up. Oh no, it'll be Mighty and Ray. Experience Mighty and Ray in 3D graphics for the very first time. That'll be the big draw, I can hear it now. And yet they'll still use the Raphanite models with no credits. I am calling it. Anyway, scummy business practices aside, let's get back to the actual game, and some positives no less. Because the last and best thing on the agenda when it comes to any Sonic game is the music. Yeah, the soundtrack. Genuinely the best part of any new Sonic game release nowadays. We've got an excellent team working on this, comprised of all the greats. And yet what we've heard so far isn't all that great. At least in my opinion. Yeah, honestly, I'm not particularly sold so far. Nothing we've heard is bad, far from it. There's no Green Hill in here. It's just not jumping out to me as anything too special. What I'm hearing just kinda blurs together with every other classic Sonic track, hitting all of the right beats, but not going any further than that. And again, it's all perfectly serviceable, but Mania. That soundtrack was like an 11 out of 10. Anything less than that for Superstars is simply not good enough. That is all excluding Pinball Carnival. I'm growing to like that one more and more with every passing day, exactly as predicted. I'm still not fully sold on the entire tune, but man, that bombastic opening, that is perfection. Hopefully they're just saving all of the best tunes for the full release. I mean, we've got T-fucking-Lopes on the OST. That man does not miss when he's left to his own devices. I'm not sold on this soundtrack yet, but I am cautiously optimistic, and that kinda sums up my feelings on Superstars as a whole, really. For as much as it's got a great many aspects that really rub me the wrong way, it's also still a classic Sonic game at its core, and those do tend to be pretty good. The visuals, the emerald powers, the stupid modern-day corporate collaboration infesting its way into the experience, all of those are just layers on top of an extremely solid foundation. When I'm watching footage of this game, for as much concern as I have about several of the quirks, I'm also just watching a nicely designed 2D Sonic level played through with a nicely controlling 2D Sonic, and that's pretty comforting. Even at its absolute worst, I still expect Superstars to be a perfectly enjoyable time, as I mentioned however long ago in this video. In fact, there's a good chance that enjoyable time is currently already out, right now, for you to go experience yourself. I'm not quite sure how long this video will take to put together. I'm hoping I can get it done just before the release, but I know who I am and how I work, so there's a good chance that won't happen. Regardless of its timing, I still decided to proceed with this video because I don't really see myself speaking on Superstars anytime in the near future. All of my major gripes and critiques and interesting observations are for things we've already seen. I highly doubt this'll be a Frontiers situation, where I'll have so much more to say about the game after its release. Side note to the 3 of you who care. That one's still happening, don't worry. I mean, never say never. Maybe there's something hidden inside of Superstars that'll prompt a major reaction out of me. But right now, I think I've said my piece. So, all that's left to do is thank you for watching, remind you of my Patreon, Twitter and Ko-Fi pages, and make it clear that the game is probably out. Like, what are you doing? Don't listen to some random British hermit's pre-release thoughts. Go play the game and form an opinion for yourself. Well, considering that price tag, and maybe wait for a fucking discount.